Locally owned and operated for over 50 years, Delaware Camera is your #1 spot for all your camera needs, education, accessories, printing, and more. Located at 2635 Delaware Avenue in Buffalo. Visit cameraspot.com.
Hey, welcome to True Believers Tech Talk Tuesday. This is our 50th episode. We've been at this for about a year, and we are excited about it. And today is also Producer Will's birthday. Happy birthday, Producer Will. I'm here with
a BTS cam with this action shot right now.
I'm here with Dean, our my wonderful associate, who is a video wizard, as they would say.
Me.
He's got a lot of video information, which we're going to talk about today. We're talking about camera rigging today and the things you can get for your camera to rig out your video mostly. Yeah, because you don't really rig out film like picture cameras.
Yeah, I mean, definitely some specialty use stuff in photography that where video gear could carry over.
Yeah.
Really.
L brackets. I have some other stuff here.
Or keyword that can also replace an L bracket, a half cage. We'll get into that momentarily.
We may bring Stephen Neff in to talk a little bit about things because Stephen loves gear. These guys are talking about gear earlier today. These guys love gear. Not a gear person.
Dapper-looking gentleman behind the camera over there. He's got a very nice-looking purple on.
Looking like a skinny grimace over there.
Oh, time out.
Just joking.
Wait
anyway,
now.
All right. So a few things are housekeeping as we normally do. Tomorrow night we have a travel photography class with the f-stops here. Mr. Joe Klosek will be presenting that at 6:30. Tickets are still available. You go to our website. There's an Eventbrite link there. If you go to Instagram, there is a link in the bio there to sign up for the class as well. So if you want to sign up for the classes, we have a couple classes coming up with Joe as well. We've got travel tomorrow. We got night photography next Wednesday, and then family photography the Wednesday after that. So we've got a few coming up with Joe. We also have some in-person classes, which we are excited about. We have a class coming up this Sunday called Posing Partners, where a lot of times, people don't know how to pose when you're out and about with your partner or your kids. And this class will give you some tips on how to take great pictures with your cell phone, your regular camera, whatever you got. Cat Mag's Photo, who was on the show last week, will be presenting that. You excited about that, Dean?
I am.
Gonna peek in on Sunday when you're working?
Absolutely. I will come upstairs.
Very cool. Another class we have coming up is our 35mm beginners class, which is being presented by Debbie Orange, who's actually in New York this week shooting Fashion Week. Yeah. Hi, Debbie. She's probably not watching. She's probably taking pictures of some famous person or something. But she'll be on next week actually on the show to talk about her class as well. So we are excited about that. And I'm sure Debbie will have a story or two about her adventures at Fashion Week in New York. So
I'm sure she's using film for her professional work too.
She's got some digital going.
I'm sure she's mixing both, which is hard to do these days.
Yeah, it's cool. She's gonna have some great stuff. I'm excited. I'm excited she's doing that. It's pretty cool to get out there and do all that good stuff. To reiterate, it's our 50th episode. It is Will's birthday. Producer Will, happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Should we sing? No, I'm not singing.
Yeah.
I would.
Exactly. Oh, another thing. Onion Studio is presenting a underwater photography class on March 5th from 4 to 10 at the Saturn Club. So if you want to learn about underwater photography, this is a great opportunity for that. Like in Buffalo, we never have stuff like this. And Dylan over there at Onion Studio is presenting this. It's great. You don't have to have your own equipment. They're going to provide everything for you. They're going to give you tips, pointers on how to make great underwater images. So it's a really cool thing for Buffalo, especially this time of year where it's cold. Like, who's taking underwater pictures in Buffalo?
No, I'm actually very curious on how that's going to go.
Yeah, you should go.
I might have to.
I think it'll be great.
When was that again?
March 5th at the Saturn Club. If you want to get tickets, go to onionstudio.com, and I believe Dylan has a link there. Or search for Onion Studio on Facebook, and I'm sure they'll give you more information there as well. Dylan's a pretty personable guy, so get at him. He's doing some great things here. So that's it for, I think, the housekeeping right now. As you know what we do here, we do film, scanning, rentals, all that good stuff. Lighting upstairs, bags downstairs. We got everything here. So Got Canon, Fuji, Nikon, Sony, Olympus, DJI, Zhiyun. What else we have? What other products do we have? ProMaster is our accessory brand as well. So we got all that stuff. So we got Rode microphones. We're gonna have Rode on soon. But Benro, Manfrotto tripods, everything. So
Nanlite.
we're gonna take a little bit of a break, and then we're gonna come back and talk to Dean about camera rigging. Right, we are back with talking to Dean about rigging. So we got a bunch. We've had like little bits and pieces of rigging accessories over the years, but because Dean has come into our company, he's wanted to get a lot more rigging equipment in stock, and he's got a bunch of things here, and he shoots a lot. What kind of stuff do you shoot, Dean? I know we've been on here before talking about these things, but what kind of stuff do you like to shoot?
I am pretty heavily involved in the college sports world. I work for a couple D1 and a D2 college, a couple D1 schools and D2 school in the area. I pretty much do all kinds of photo and video services for them, whether it's covering strict just highlights in game and doing post-game interviews with the coaches, or whether it's sit-down interviews with coaches and staff talking about the program or anything like that, a more serious matter. And I also do some of the creative content for social media as well, with like media day stuff, for example. And then I also do, like, as a personal interest side to things, I also reach out and do creative content for music artists in the Buffalo area, like Spotify canvases and stuff like that. So
I know, like, I mean, in my mind, when I'm shooting video, like, I don't know anything about this stuff, but I'll just take a camera, maybe throw a microphone on it or something, and then get a light, be ready to go. So tell me about some of these accessories that you have here and what they kind of do and what they can do for someone who's getting into video and how they can improve their video.
Yeah, so I guess kind of gonna start with like the basics. If I grab here, this is pretty much my rig. This is a combination of things that I've learned that I've needed over the years, including a 15mm base plate system. We are slowly gonna start selling these in store. This is mine, for example, of one of the many brands out there that make 15mm systems. I own this one. I've had it for a very long time. This is the example of the model that we're going to be selling in store. Pretty much going to be the small rig brand, a really popular brand in the industry that makes these kind of accessories.
So real quick, if I'm starting and I buy these rails, what am I getting to start? Like before I start rigging it up and outfitting it, what am I starting
So
off
what
with?
the rail system does, so they're pretty much a standardized size of rail, and pretty much it allows you to pretty much add on any kind of accessories in front of the camera, and then camera accessories along the side of the lens as well, without making the camera too wide. Kind of keeps it a narrow kind of working system where you can apply different accessories depending on what part of the camera you need to need that accessory near.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I get these.
You get these. You get a base plate because that is what one.
Is that where the camera goes?
Yeah. So one, you have the camera. Like the small rig system is a really nice example. You have the separate plate that pops right out. Oops. You didn't see that. You didn't see that. Usually the screws are securely in the camera, so they're not dropping out of the ground. But this guy really funny. And then, so this is what connects to the camera. This allows you to always separate your camera from what's actually, connected to the rig and everything. And then you can actually connect your base plate, what connects you to your tripod, for example, to the bottom of this part of the rig here. So that way you have the whole system that can connect to a tripod, for example, and keep everything connected. And then you have a way to separate the camera from the whole system if you really need to.
So am I kind of starting off with this piece here?
Yeah, so I'll kind of take off the battery accessory. We'll get into that later. So this is kind of like the core of your rig. Is going to be this system right here. This allows the 15mm rods to be kind of built in, and then with 15mm rods, a lot of the accessories have been standardized to fit on these systems. So this is kind of, these base plates, they come in all different sizes. They have some that where it permanently stays on the camera and keeps the 15mm rails in it, or you have a more advanced system like this where you can actually separate the camera from the base plate system. So this is definitely one of the more effective base plate systems out there. It's why I wanted to bring this one in, for example. And having that clamp system that goes under the camera, that's really nice for effective.
So it has a quick release like a tripod?
Pretty much, yeah. Okay. Adds a secondary quick release function. And this is nice compared to regular knobs. It's very easily accessible. And yeah, so with that, like a very easy camera to apply to this base plate, for example, is like the FX3, for example. Yeah. No, very ergonomically sound camera in terms of like the built-in screws and everything. Like, for example, this is a camera that is very easy to rig up. For example, rig it up right now. Like, for example, producer Will Holland, he has a built version of this guy on standby for when we do a lot of shoots. But this is a unbuilt version of the FX rig that producer Will Holland has. If you look, for example, how easy it is to accessorize, we typically use half cages like these guys to kind of apply most of our accessories. And then you look at another more traditional hybrid camera, for example, my old Nikon Z6, I have to have this huge, enormous cage that covers all sides of my camera in order to kind of get the accessories on this camera that I really want.
Here's a question. Are people, since these have the screws on them, are people just attaching stuff to these cameras, or is everyone using a cage?
For cameras like these, this eliminates the need for an entire cage like how I have for that Nikon camera. Like, for example, with the cinema line that Sony's doing, Sony's pretty much the only brand that does photo and video cameras that's really making cameras that have that upgradability in terms of adding accessories. Like, for example, the Nikon camera, like most photo video hybrid cameras, is naturally only going to have that quarter screw on the bottom of the camera for putting on the tripod. There's no real way to put things on top of the camera unless you're using the actual cold shoe mount, which you're not really supposed to use once you start upgrading to heavier equipment like monitors, because that can actually damage the cold shoe long term.
So speaking of that, like, what kind of stuff am I going to attach? Like, if I'm going to put this cage on my camera and all this, gear it out, what type of stuff am I attaching to my video camera to do that?
So like, for example, when it comes to the sports world and also like the interview world, there's a lot of needs that are very similar. For example, the biggest thing is monitoring your image. So for example, I forgot to grab one on the table. If you want to have my assistant, one of my assistants hand me a Ninja.
Oh, they're assistants now.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. That's what everyone's, because I'm in charge today, apparently, for the next 10 minutes. And then everyone's, you have, for example, a very common monitoring brand, the Atomos Ninja. Not only is it a much larger screen than the actual screen on the back of the camera, but it gives you lots of professional tools like histograms, focus peaking, false colors, a bunch of professional video accessories that help with how people orientate their focus, their highlights, how people overall control their image when shooting video. And then when it comes to a bigger monitor like this, and then recording over long periods of time, that transitions to the need for power. Cameras, especially mirrorless cameras nowadays, are going to be very demanding in power. So you have what you call has become a standardized large battery type that is able to output multiple sources of power. Is the V-mount battery type, and we're actually going to be selling a lot of gear to help this ecosystem. For example, you have a 15mm rod base plate system. So this, or battery plate system, for example, this allows you to put this battery, lock it on right pretty much just like so, and then allows you to actually slide it onto the rig, for example, like how I have this base plate right here. And it's a very easy system to demount with a simple button, and to also just throw right into any system like that. And typically you will have power going out to the camera as well as to the monitor, and then typically any other accessories you have as well. There's lots of other accessories out there that exist, like for example, lens motors. If you're running any wireless electronic focus control systems, these motors are always going to require more voltage to actually have the torque to turn a lot of lens focuses and lens focus motors in rings like that. So typically you're going to want to have a lot of power to supply tools like this, for example.
So here's a question. I know we have these things called cheese plates. Why do I need a cheese plate?
Oh, so cheese plate kind of falls
Do you have
into...
a cheese plate here?
No, we do not. So a cheese plate is kind of like a generic tool that really, like I said, it's really just a generic tool that is, I typically don't use any myself. Typically cheese plates are used for storing extra screws, extra materials,
So we'll have more
or
mounts
just
for...
a generic mounting area for a lot of tools. Like sometimes you'll use like a cheese plate, like you'll create a clamp for, like, for example, like a lot of times people use wireless transmitters, for example, and they'll clamp, I don't know, that's kind of like, for example, I mean, I guess you could kind of, it kind of looks like the back of the V-mount plate here with all the extra screws. Typically, like, for example, like a cheese plate will usually contain multiple different size screws for either mounting any kind of accessories on or just storing like extra screws and tools and stuff in general.
A cheese plate becomes a bridge, right? The cheese plate is the piece in between. All right, I gotta get this small mount. I gotta get this over here, right? I have this type of mount, and it doesn't line up with this. Okay, I can use the 1/4-20 on the quick release below, and I can use a 3/8 thread and attach them together. So it's sort of a cheese plate becomes,
So
a multi-tool.
So what about like articulating?
Universal adapter.
What about like articulating arms? 'Cause I know we were looking at some of those yesterday.
Yeah.
Do we have any here?
Yeah. So, producer Will Honan has an example of a larger
TM
trademark. This is an example of a top handle. This is the XLR input handle that goes for the FX3 and FX30 models. This already comes with 2 quarter screws on top of it, but with, for example, accessorizing, we actually were able to add this little end piece here to the handle. Not only did that allow, extra grip to grab onto the handle so you have more security while handling the camera, but it also added pretty much a mini cheese plate on top of the handle. So normally there was only those 2 screws right there. Now instead of using those 2 screws to hold on to the cheese plate, you can put on absolutely anything. And it even adds a cold shoe to the back of the camera so you can throw on anything, any extra tools like this wireless audio receiver that can go right into the camera, for example. So this is the handle that Sony came up with. If I were to just quickly demonstrate by throwing this on here. What this putting all these screws and all these different options allows you to keep all these different tools very close to the camera. So that way, if you need to use a aux cable to output the audio that's going into the camera, you have that, that nearness, that compactness that you can build with a lot of rigs. And sometimes, a lot of people in the industry have different opinions about how they want to build their rigs. Some people want everything as compact as possible. Like, for example, some people would say that this V plate is too big. That's why, like, you have this, for example, we have little mini V mount plates like these. These are very easy to attach to, for example, cheese plates, or for example, like this is just a straightforward rail block, or as you could technically call it, a cheese plate, as all it does is add extra screw points to a 15mm rod system. Just allows you to put anything anywhere you want. So some people would rather have this right behind the camera on their 15mm plate and try to keep it as compact as possible. Some people want it more spread out. If you're doing handheld use, you want this battery to not weigh more than like the front lens, for example, or you don't want your front lens to be incredibly front heavy, and so it's harder to hold your camera handheld. So typically you want a good distribution of weight between the front of the rig and the back of the rig. So that's why some people prefer different size batteries.
So are most of like the adjustments, like the screws and stuff, are most of them able to be done by hand, or are you going to need tools like these like Allen keys?
Yeah, so typically you will have tools standardized in the video industry to either Allen wrench or Allen keys, and then you will have basic flathead screws that will either be in quarter screws or 3/8 screws. And typically, if you're like me, you're always carrying tools around. Like I have 2-hole Allen keys for a bunch of different Allen keys, and I typically have a screwdriver on me, and I'm usually always have at least 2 screwdrivers of different sizes on me.
See, Small Rig has this this multi-tool.
Like, so example, I just listed off 3. Sorry, oops. Good hands. I just listed off 3 different tools that I'm carrying around. This is a tool that we just got in from a brand called Small Rig. That actually puts all of these into one tool size. That has a standard Phillips screwdriver head, a couple different standard Allen size keys, and then for example, it has regular Phillips flathead but not Phillips flathead screws in general. So this is actually a really nice small tool that I might buy myself, because it even comes with a little mini cheese plate of screws for you to keep any extra screws if you really want.
So what about like cable management with like when you you have all these wires going everywhere? Are people like more wireless, or are they like having a lot of cables?
Yeah, so especially when it comes to certain systems like HDMI cables or, for example, like focus motor systems, like I have this focus motor system. Here's the motor, here's the focus control system. This has to output power into this. So here's one cable, and then you can either use a single battery to go in there, or you can be like me and use a dummy battery, add another cable to your setup. So I'm typically, managing a lot of my cables. So for example, we have a brand called Sprig, and they make their little items called Sprigs. And pretty much these are these cute little rubber. They are, because a lot of times you have all these like matte black, tools, and then you see the one bit of color you have on here. This is an example of the larger size Sprigs. This one came in blue. This one usually lets me keep my power cables, any extra audio cables I have running back here. We sell them in 5-packs now at the store in red, blue, and black. These guys are, nice little ways to add colors to your rig, because especially once you get more into the video industry and you're interacting with more people, especially once you get into the small team productions, like actual commercial production teams, you will start to see a lot of people, develop character with their rigs and stuff like that, especially people who are in it for years and years and years. So very cool. Sprigs are a really cool brand to, just help keep your rig more compact, because the amount of times that I wouldn't use something like that and I have my cable hanging out as far away from my rig as possible, and I went to grab the lens and I accidentally yank the cord out, it's probably, the worst thing you could probably do is, just disconnect your own monitor from the camera. So
very unprofessional.
But
anyway, so we have a display of all these different things because Dean has gotten them in the store. So I know he's outfitting this, and I know we have more stuff coming in. So we have a nice little display in the store where we're going to be like kind of displaying all this stuff. So if you kind of want to see examples of how these things are used, definitely stop in the store, because we're setting it up, and it's a whole new world for people like me, but it's old hat for Dean and Steven and stuff.
And producer Will.
Once you get your hands on it, you start to understand.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Once you see how like the weight is distributed, how the different things are hanging off, then you kind of know how and why you need all these things.
Yeah. Thank you. That is a good keyword.
We talked about balance. Talk about balance.
Talk about balance. So ergonomics, like kind of like everyone's rig, the way people, if you're left-handed or right-handed, the way you prefer holding your camera, the way you prefer, putting your camera on top of your shoulder, you like cocking it like into your armpit or into your chest. You like using any kind of tools like a gimbal or anything. Everyone's going to be different in the industry, and with so many brands like Small Rig and so on. There's going to be a lot of variety for people out there, and so that's kind of what I'm trying to get us to do, is kind of have like a general supply of of variety, at least a couple of different variety of the same thing in terms of accessories, so that different choices, people have different choices. Do they want to build their rig small? Do they want to build their rig small? Well, that's a small rig. No, like there's really a lot of different options when it comes to how you want to accessorize your camera, and it really just depends on how it benefits you in the long run. Is it, you know, how easy is it gonna make your next shoot? Because realistically, like a lot of the investing is simply investing towards eliminating a problem, eliminating a task you have to do during your shoot. Like having long-term battery life, that is something you never have to worry about during a shoot again, is changing your batteries. You just have to have the one big battery, and you don't have to worry about that at all, especially if you're like me, like who's out in the field. I can't always carry around multiple batteries with me every time I'm like walking around the football field, for example. So
okay, cool. Thank you for coming on last minute, Dean, because I know we had a cancellation. If you follow social media, you know about that. But yeah, this stuff is all in the store. We're getting more and more of it in as time goes on. So if you want to if you're interested in this, you know, getting into video, getting more professional with your video, these are the accessories that you need. So definitely stop in and we'll try to, you know, show you these things. And if there's something you're looking for, you know, give us a call, stop in. We'll be happy to go through all this with you. One last thing I wanted to say, as we close our 50th episode of True Believers Tech Talk Tuesday. Yeah, we have our year coming up in a couple weeks. So
like a party popper.
We've been talking about NFRCC conference that's been coming up in March. It's canceled, so just be aware of that if you had signed up. I'm sure you got an email or something about that. So just mentioning it, even though Steven's like waving me off. Anyway, we'll see you next week, and thanks for watching. And if you like this, like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, all that good stuff. Have a good one. Peace.
Locally owned and operated for over 50 years, Delaware Camera is your #1 spot for all your camera needs: education, accessories, printing, and more. Located at 2635 Delaware Avenue in Buffalo. Visit cameraspot.com.